So the whole country shut down. So yeah, it's pretty boring here, having 105,000 yen for having a group of more than 2 people.
This video has been made for the Global Family Project about coronavirus.
Hey, I'm Noel. I'm just going to talk a bit about what coronavirus is like where I'm staying now, and also in Australia, because I'm from Australia and I know more about the situation there than here, which is probably a bit of a worry. But anyway. Yeah, so here everything's in lockdown. I got sent home, so I've been working from home for the last 2 weeks. Basically, you're only allowed to go out to buy essential stuff, like going to the supermarket and going for exercise within 2 kilometres of your house, and that's going to be until April 12th, and then they're going to review their decision. So that's the government in Ireland, Dublin. So yeah, it's pretty boring here. Haven't been doing much beyond sitting in the house and working. Ain't much else to do. Anyway, so in Australia, I'm a lot more informed about that. So basically in Australia, the borders have been locked down for at least the next 6 months, so only residents can return. And any residents returning will actually be put up in hotels for a 2-week quarantine period at the government's expense. That's to prevent contact with other people, obviously, and it's also helping the hotel businesses because they're really struggling at the moment. So it's a two-sided thing. Even internal borders are being closed. So the states, if you move between states, you'll have to go through a further 2-week quarantine period again. So there's some people, they might arrive in Sydney, they'll be put up in quarantine at a hotel in Sydney, and then they continue to travel to their home state, and then they'll have to go into quarantine again for 2 weeks. And then you have things like Tasmania has completely locked its borders to any non-residents, including mainland Australians. So the whole country shut down. It's pretty bad. So in my home state of Victoria, basically everyone has to stay at home. You can only go out to basically buy food supplies, medicine, exercise close to your home. And you're only allowed to go, out to work and study if it's absolutely impossible for you to do that from home. So basically, everything's moved online. Most people who can are working from home, and for those people who can't because their job is retail or hospitality or something like that, they've basically lost their jobs at this point. And like all places where people can congregate have basically been closed. Like no beaches. Parks are all closed, and the police will actively be enforcing all of this. Even groups of more than 2 people have been banned, and people who break this rule face like a $1,600 fine or about 105,000 yen for having a group of more than 2 people. We do have a slight shortage of medical supplies like personal protective equipment, so the government has been urging people not to buy that unless they need it, to save it for medical staff. Yeah, so they're trying to ramp up production locally. They've even deployed the army to help manufacture stuff at certain factories. And they've also deployed the military along with giving the police expanded powers to make sure that people are obeying quarantine laws. Yeah, so you got police and military ringing people who are in quarantine like twice a day to make sure they are in quarantine like they're supposed to. And yeah, anyone who breaks those rules or goes out of quarantine will face severe penalties. Thousands of dollars, which is a good thing, I guess. Yeah. And so the other side, of course, is the economy, which is doing quite badly at the moment. So the government has released all these economic stimulus measures. So they spent like $320 billion over the course of a few weeks. So that's like 16% of the whole country's GDP, which is pretty crazy. So for workers who got laid off, like hospitality, retail, the government is actually going to pay them about $1,500 a fortnight, so again about 100,000 yen, and that will then the government will pay this money to their employers on the condition that these workers remain on the employer's book. So the idea is basically we're going to hibernate the economy, but everyone stays employed as much as possible, and then when the whole corona fiasco is over, they'll be able to just go back to work as though nothing happened. That's the theory. Not sure if it'll work that well. It's still doing a lot of damage to the economy. But overall, it seems the government's doing an all right job of keeping people okay in terms of their finances. So at least for the most part, no one's going to go hungry or get kicked out. They've even the government's even introduced a no eviction period. So people who are having trouble with their rent, basically, they will. Basically, the landlords can't kick people out, so there's a ban for, I think, 6 months. And yeah, the government says this whole situation is going to go on for about 6 months. And of course, all of that is with the intention of flattening the curve so that the health system doesn't get overwhelmed. Which in Australia they're doing a reasonable job. So I think there's something like 5,000 infected now, but it's quite well contained. So put that in perspective, it's still tragic, but only about 18 people have died so far, which is pretty good considering, and it seems to show that the measures they've put in place are working. That's basically all I've got, and in terms of Ireland, it's sort of the same thing, but I'm just not getting as much news from Ireland because all the news I'm getting is coming in from Australia. But yeah, just cooped in all day, going nuts, eating way too much, yeah. Trying to catch up with friends and family over the internet. Yeah, that's about it. All right, see ya.
A pair of jeans, a shirt or two. We didn't pack as if we weren't going back.